Good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Yourself to Art, a show that explores the creative process by inviting artists to come on our show with us and to talk about their life and their art. My name is David Schrader, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Linda Scheller. Come on in, Linda.
Hi, David.
Good afternoon. It's always good to see you on these Sunday afternoons.
Good to see you.
Yeah, we have this wonderful guest today, as usual, Dr. Daniel Afonso, I'm sorry, get the pronunciation right. But before we bring him on, I thought we'd take some time to inform our audience of some of the things that's going on artistically in our community. So why don't we take just a brief minute to do that? Let's see, first we have, what do we have? I need my glasses for this, have to read. So Opera Modesto announces its Summer Opera Institute for youth artists graduating from 8th through the 12th grades. The program consists of workshops designed to enhance self-confidence, leadership, and performing skills. Official classes will be held July 19th through the 30th, 2021. Applications are due by 5 p.m. on April 15th, online at operamodesto.org. So sign up. And next we have.
And the Prospect Theater Project has The Postman Always Rings Twice as their next Radio Cavalcade production. It will be performed April 9th through 11th, streamed, I should say, and tickets are available online at prospecttheaterproject.org. Don't miss it.
Okay. Next we have Start is a bilingual arts magazine for children and families. It focuses on artists and art opportunities in Stanislaus County, California. This issue features the theme Earth and has projects and creative prompts inspired by nature and science. Pre-order now and get it in time for Earth Day, April 22nd. $10 at lindanoel.com.
April at the Mislin Gallery, the Yosemite Tapestries and Preserving Our Wilderness. The tapestries, 9 panels by Miriam McNitt, are yarn stitcheries that were originally commissioned by Yosemite National Park for their Visitor Center Theater. 3 large pieces describe the natural biomes within the park boundaries. 6 smaller panels tell the cultural history of the park, from its Native American tribes to John Muir's visits through the 1970s when these works were created. In addition to the tapestries, the show will have works by regional artists on the wide-ranging theme of wildlife, wilderness, environmentalism, and the conservation of our national parks.
There you have it. Something to do in your spare time in this community. Okay, Linda, let's get to the focus of the program. You know Daniel more than I do. I guess you've been in his chorus, you've interacted with him. So why don't you tell us a little bit something about him, and we'll bring him on and start the discussion.
Gladly. Daniel R. Afonso Jr. is a professor of music and coordinator of vocal and choral studies at California State University Stanislaus. Dr. Afonso is the founding director of the Modesto Symphony Orchestra Chorus. He's a composer, arranger, and editor of choral music, and his choral works have been performed throughout the world and published by a number of music publications. Dr. Afonso is renowned for his research and performance of Brazilian choral music, and he frequently lectures and presents workshops about the Latin American choral repertoire in the US and abroad. He's very active as a voice instructor, clinician, and guest conductor. And in 2020, Dr. Afonso was honored with the California Music Educator Association's John Swain College University Educator Award. Welcome, Daniel.
Come on in, Daniel. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to be with you guys here. Good to see you, Linda.
Oh, so good to see you.
It's been a difficult time. We're missing each other from our meetings, our Monday meetings in the Symphony Chorus, and all our Symphony Chorus family, really. So I hope there
Right.
are a few of them watching us.
So, right. So what's been going on in this past year? No chorus, no. What are the plans for the future? How's it been for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. That is, if anyone had told me, I don't know, 5 years ago that there would come a day when singing was a dangerous activity, I would not believe. I would think it would be a joke. But here we are, a year and a half into this situation, unfortunate situation. I'm very, very thankful for the privilege that in this country we've had now with vaccination, and things are starting to improve. In my native country, Brazil, things are still really dire. It's just really, if you're watching the news, but anyways, but it's been an interesting experience because the university where I teach at CSU Stanislaus, our classes have been fully online. All of the performing ensembles, all of the any music classes, and you can imagine like how challenging. I mean, I think we're all every teacher is facing a ridiculous challenge right now. But I think we can only speak from our own personal experiences now, and mine is that trying to keep people motivated and interested, and also feeling the sense of kind of accomplishment while just doing everything virtually has been a big challenge. The students have been trying so hard, but and then of course with the chorus, with the symphony chorus, the symphony had to put their season on hold, and so the season has been doing some. I'm sorry, the Modesto Symphony has been doing some virtual events. They have been doing a couple of virtual events. But the chorus itself had to stop rehearsing because of the danger of group singing, particularly indoors. And so we had to stop. We had to stop last winter. I think we in January we were supposed to come back from the break, and we didn't, and we've been on hold since. I don't, as far as what's to come, I don't know quite yet. We have been making some plans for the symphony for next year. But I think the most important thing right now is just to wait until it is a safe time again. It's safe again for everybody to be singing in groups, indoors or outdoors, whatever. And I think the time is coming. I am hopeful that at some point next season we'll be able to gather again, but there's nothing official yet, so it's still a little early to plan.
Yeah, you're in the same position a lot of us are, just
Yeah.
wanting to start up, wanting to do things, and just holding our breath, so to speak. So
Exactly.
anyway, before we get into some of your music, which I have listened to and found what very inspiring, entertaining, whatever, um, you've mentioned Brazil a couple of times, and I just found out talking to you the other day that that's where you're from, that's where you're born. So could you fill us in a little bit about your early life there, your early development as a
Yes.
choral director? Take it away.
Yes. So, yes, I am originally from Brazil. My family is from the northeastern part of the country, and that's where I was born. I was born in a city in the very extreme northeast, called Natal, Natal. And that's the city where my parents used to live. And my mom is from there, and so that's where I was born. But well, my dad worked in the Brazilian Navy, and so when I was about 2.5, 3 years old, my dad was transferred. The Navy transferred him to another base in Rio, and so I grew up in Rio, like from 3 years old until my adult life, my young adult life. I grew up in Rio, so I kind of consider myself from Rio. When people ask me where are you from, I normally just say I'm from Rio because that's kind of my formative, all my
Yeah.
youth and all of that was that I lived there. Um, and I graduated from college from the university in Rio, one of the federal schools that is in Rio de Janeiro. But my passion for choir started, I think, at a very young age. I was very fortunate to have parents who had a vision, that wanted to expose me, like taking this example, expose yourself to art, expose me at a young age to various different, areas, sports and music and art and that kind of thing. So one of the things that they put me in, it was a children's choir. So when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I joined my first children's choir, and that's actually where my musical development started, because it was a really wonderful organization that was actually part of a larger organization that was an adult choir, and this children's choir was like the education wing of that organization, very similar to what we have here with our Modesto Symphony Chorus. And so, but that's where I started to learn to read music. That's where I started to play the recorder, and that's where I started my passion for singing and group singing. And that was kind of I have very, very, very clear memories of that time, of my first day picking up the recorder and reading, and just what an impact that made on, just on me, just such something that has just stuck with me. I grew up, my parents both are Baptist, they go to a Baptist church, so I grew up in that environment. And because of that, I had the opportunity to kind of do a lot of music in the church, as part of the church ministry. So I started to take piano lessons at church. I started to, play for services, and sometimes, I sing in a bunch of choirs. And my first choir, the first choir that I directed, was a church group. It was a kind of a youth church choir of sorts. It was really interesting because the members of the choir were all people, we were all same age. I was like 15, 16. Yeah. And so they were all same age. So it was, you can imagine, a bunch of wild horses trying to control themselves. It was just kind of a crazy experience. But we were all very good friends, and we were all kind of had everybody in this group that I started had some sort of a music background. They had taken some music lessons when they were kids, so it was a very gifted group, and we had some really fun experiences singing together. And that's when I started writing for choir, because I wrote a lot of the things that group sang. They were like arrangements of church songs and hymns and that kind of stuff, because that's where we mostly performed in services in churches.
So to just interrupt a minute.
Yeah,
so
please.
You started composing at this very young age. You were a teenager.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. At the time, I didn't really think about it as, oh, I'm creating some new things and I'm composing. For me, it was like, okay, what can I do with this song to make it more interesting for this group of people to sing? What can I change? Or what if I do a harmony here? And I wasn't really thinking, wow, I'm creating a work of art. You know what I mean? It was a very kind of utilitarian sort of thing, Yeah. It wasn't until I got to college as a music major that I started to think, wow, there are some techniques and there are some things that I can kind of relate to in order to create more interesting works of art. And that's kind of I started really thinking about, okay, I'm now composing, I'm really creating something. Yeah. But there was actually there was a sort of two sides there, because with more knowledge also came more kind of self-awareness and criticism, because you start to study music and you start to see, the brilliant things that people have composed and written, and the amazing works of, music and the masterworks. And so you get so excited about those things that it's also very easy to start thinking, okay, I'm never going to be Bach. I'm never going to be, I'm never going to sound like Beethoven. I shouldn't even dare to write anything, because compared to this, you know what I mean? Like, you start to become so critical of everything that you do, that I actually went through a phase when I just stopped writing music altogether, because I was just like, I just couldn't find anything that I wrote worth it or interesting enough. For me, it was just kind of, so I just put it on hold for a while. I would still write, an arrangement for a choir here and there, because during college and in the few years after college, before I came to the US, I worked with a lot of choirs in Rio, church choirs, community choirs, school choirs. I was kind of a freelance conductor, so to speak. So, and every now and then I would write something for one of my choirs. Like this. Oh, this school wants to do a program about blah blah blah, and I have this tune that I think the choir is going to do well. So I would write something for that event, but nothing really. Again, I just always just felt that I was just writing, something just to be consumed and forgotten. Just this is just
Sure.
for this opportunity. I don't know. I've never had this. I
No,
thought of
you,
myself
you, you
as someone
sound like
creating art.
you sound like a lot of artists that at the point they take themselves seriously, they get very critical and compare themselves to the greats in the field, and
Yep.
go, oh man, I'm not there.
No, and the thing is, like, at one point, you just have to just kind of have that mindfulness experience of think, I am me, and whatever I am, it is what it is, and this is my contribution, and this is how I see things, this is how I feel, this is how I express myself. This is my idea, this is this is what I came up with. So and then you just put it there, and I think it better to create, and even if nobody's going to like it or nobody's going to see it, I would still rather create than not create.
Right.
I put it out there, and who knows? You
Yeah.
you never know. So that's kind of my take right now. I'm like,
Sure.
I'll write it, and I've been pretty happy with the
Yeah.
reaction that I've had so far.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of artists end up the same place. They can't not create. That's what they have to do.
Yep, that's kind of
Regardless.
me.
Yeah.
I mean, for a while, when I finished my undergraduate program in Rio, I stayed and I worked in Rio for a few years, just kind of thinking about what's my next thing. To be honest, I was a little like a lot of people after college. I was feeling a little burned out with school, so I'm going to take some time off. And a very wise, mentor of mine said, you will go back to school. You're going to continue your training, but just trust yourself that when the right time comes, you will know it. And so I just did that. I didn't put any pressure on myself when I graduated from college. I just had my gigs and I was working. And about 3 years later, I decided to apply for graduate school. And that's when I ended up here in the US. I had a really good friend, he's still alive, who was also a choral conductor and had come to the US a couple of years earlier and was finishing his master's degree in choral conducting at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. And I was talking to him about it. It's like I said, I'm thinking about going to graduate school. And it's like, Daniel, you really should check out this program here in Kansas City. The main professor here, Dr. Eve Ely, is a brilliant man and is a great musician, a wonderful teacher. And I think this is going to be I think you're going to like this program. So, and then the other thing was like, this friend of mine, his name is Eduardo, he was at MUMKC at the time, and he had helped our teacher to organize a tour with the choir. So the choir was going to Brazil that same year, and they came to Rio. They spent about a week in Rio, and my teacher, who became my teacher later on, he offered a master class for local Brazilian conductors in Rio with the choir while they were there, right? So I signed up for that master class, and in the end, he said, "I will accept your participation in this masterclass as an audition for the master's program." And I felt really, it was like, wow, this is great. It was the extra incentive that I needed to start kind of getting my things ready. And then 2 years later, I was in Kansas City, where I spent 2 years getting my master's degree with Dr. E. Feely, one of the most wonderful men I've ever met, incredible teacher, someone who really made a big difference in my life, and a big change for me. And then from Kansas City, I went to a very cold place,
Yes.
Nebraska. I spent a year in Nebraska as a teaching at one of those many liberal arts colleges in the Midwest, Doane College in Crete, Nebraska. And I was the choral director there, was taking a sabbatical, And so I applied for the job, and I got the opportunity to teach at Dillon College for a year while their choir director was on a sabbatical. And during that year, I auditioned and interviewed and applied for graduate school again to get my doctorate degree. So that's where I went. After that year teaching in Nebraska, I went to the University of Iowa and spent 2 very cold years in Iowa. And I know you're a Hawkeye also, right, David? So
Yes.
we have this in common. And anyways, and I had a really wonderful experience. The 5 years that I spent in the Midwest were amazingly, beautiful, formative, incredibly productive years for me. Choral music is very strong in the Midwest. A lot of really incredible choirs, in Missouri, in Nebraska, in Minnesota, Illinois. I mean, a lot of really good singing happening in the Midwest. And so I had the opportunity to hear a lot of wonderful groups. I learned a lot of, techniques and repertoire, and I had the opportunity to observe a lot of wonderful conductors, And so those 5 years that I spent in the Midwest were incredible, formative years for me. It was also a very pleasant time. I think I always felt very comfortable in the Midwest. People were so very friendly to me, and a lot of people helped me in so many ways. People were so generous. When I lived in Kansas City, for example, I never had a car. So I had to walk to school every day, and I had friends. After my friends started to kind of figure out that I had no car, they started to get on the schedule or kind of who would pick me up. And every day I had a ride to school. And then in the following semesters, we would coordinate the classes that we were taking so that we would be on the same schedule. So things like that were really awesome in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this transition to my life in the United States,
So I'm going to interrupt and ask you a silly question.
Please.
Because you used the word cold a couple times, and you're from Rio.
Yes.
Did that play any part in your creative development?
That is an interesting question. I don't know. It is true that during the 5 years I was in the Midwest, I only wrote one piece. So perhaps my creative juices were a little frozen. No, that was not bad. It's just that I was in graduate school, really, and so I didn't really have time to compose much. I was just really trying to get through. But yeah, the cold was hard. Being from Rio, getting those -30 temperature, wind chill, that was kind of a scary experience for me.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be in California, honestly.
Yeah. One final question before we get to listening to some of your work. Choral work as opposed to solo work. Did you ever do any solo singing, or has it always been choir?
No, well, here's the thing. In the United States, and this is something that I really appreciate about graduate programs in choral music in the United States, is that they really emphasize that in order to be a choir teacher, you need to be a good singer yourself. You need to be able to kind of use your voice, your instrument in the most efficient, the healthiest, the most beautiful and artistic way possible. Because for most choir directors, we are not only the conductors, but we are also the only source of vocal technique for the ensemble. Linda can probably tell you that when I worked with the Modesto Symphony Chorus, I spent a lot of time teaching people how to sing, how to produce sound, how to breathe, how to stand. Sometimes even how you hold your score, hold your music can have an effect on how you sound, right? So I spent a lot of time with my ensembles kind of trying to make them aware and also kind of aware of how to do it, but also how important it is to have that basic knowledge of vocal technique so that you can go into your old age singing healthily and you don't ever have to struggle with with vocal health, doing something that is so fun for everybody. So in answer to your question, I had to take a lot of voice lessons, private voice lessons. I did some in my undergraduate program. My undergrad is in music education, so it was a little bit more comprehensive. but I did have some lessons during my undergrad. It was in graduate school that I really dedicated more time to voice lessons, and I had the opportunity to sing some solos, to have some roles in operas. Particularly in my doctoral program, I played the Duke in Gounod's Romeo and Juliet, and then I played Master Ford in um, Nicolai's Merry Wives of Windsor's play. That's an opera that's based on the Shakespeare play. And I, so I've done some small roles in operas, and in these two, I actually had, bigger roles, and I really had a wonderful time. But as far as recitals, I really, that's not really my, yeah, it's not really what I like to do. I tell my students that I like to give my back to the audience when we're on stage. So conducting for me is much more interesting, and teaching above all, but conducting is very fun.
Sure. Yeah, well, I just to add a little bit, I was in a number of choruses and choirs up through college, and as it increased, there was a pressure for me to go and study voice too. To become a better soloist, to participate in some of these choirs. That's where my question came from. That.
Yeah, I mean, and I really appreciate the all the lessons, the voice lessons that I had. I was very privileged to have two incredible voice teachers here in graduate school, both in my master's degree at UMKC and then later my doctoral program in Iowa. I studied with two baritones. I'm a baritone, who were just wonderful. And ironically, like prior to that, I had always studied with female teachers. And I don't know, maybe I really believe that voice teachers, there are so many wonderful teachers, but and sometimes you just have to have the right click between student and teacher. Like someone could be a wonderful voice teacher for this student, but not so much for the other one. So, and I think I got lucky when I came to the US that not only I got to study with two baritones who were wonderful singers and teachers, but also, I had this great experience of singing in solos and being in operas and doing recitals.
Sure. Okay, well, you brought some samples of your work.
So I did.
Let's take a listen to some of them if we can.
Of course.
Ready for that?
Do you want? Sure, but I'm wondering if you want to show that picture of my beginning. Like the beginning of my career as a choir person.
Okay. So Linda, do we have that? Oh, there
That's
it is.
Me in my first church choir, first row, right center there with my arms as stiff as I could. Because that's what I was told. You see? My bell bottoms.
Yes.
This is like mid 70s. So it's really that was my beginning of my career.
Oh, it's so great to see this.
And this teacher, this conductor, is still alive, and she's wonderful. And later, when I was talking about that church choir that I started with a youth choir, both her daughters sang in that choir that I started. So we are still friends until today, and she's wonderful. I think this woman changed the lives of a lot of children, who studied music.
Sure. Wonderful. There you are. Okay.
So the first piece that I wanted to kind of share with you and your audience is a piece called Na Bahia Tem. And this is a piece, it means Bahia is the state in the north of Brazil. And basically it says, in Bahia, there is this. And then the entire song is listing what you find in Bahia, fruits and foods and types of dances and dresses and all the things that you find in Bahia. Now, I wanted to show you this because this was the first piece I had published in the United States. When I was in graduate school, I wrote this piece as a gift to one of my teachers, and he loved the piece and sent it to a publisher in Texas, Alliance Publishers, and they got interested in Daniel. We want to publish this. So this was the first piece I published in the U.S., and this was also my first piece performed by an all-state choir. So this is the 2013 Missouri All-State, conducted by Dr. Josh Haberman, performing my piece, Na Bahia Tem.
Okay, let's listen.
So
Very
that's
nice.
kind of the first piece. Thank you. The first piece that I published in the US, and it is a very playful piece, and just basically talking about the beautiful things and the interesting things you find in the state of Bahia, this northeastern state. Now, this is also a good example of the kind of the things that I like to write about in my music. I love Brazilian folklore. So pretty much, I would say 99% of my compositions are inspired by or influenced by or quote some kind of a folk tune. I have a colleague who says that, I call them I call them arrangements, a choral arrangement of a folk tune. And I have a colleague who says, Daniel, those are not arrangements; those are original compositions. You just use a melody from that's already previously existent, Brazilian folklore, but that's kind of what I like to do. So most of the music that I'm going to share with you today are arrangements of folk tunes from Brazil, which is just really what I love to do.
Yeah. The rhythms.
Yes.
There too.
Say it again.
The rhythms that's in the original, somewhat similar to the original folk music that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Most of everything that I write, I try to, if this music is part of some kind of a folk tradition or a dance, or if there are some things that are very peculiar about the music, I try to preserve those elements to stay as connected to how the folk music would be performed as possible. However, that being said, I don't really consider my music folk music, because it's not music that is created to be part of a folk tradition or folk celebration. So my music is inspired by folk music, but it's not folk music. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I was just intrigued by the rhythm.
Yeah.
That's
I love. I mean, this is something that I grew up with. That's our musical, vocabulary is really very rich, and our music is very influenced by African, music, because of, like, in this country, we had a lot of slaves coming to the South America, and Brazil had a ridiculously large number of slaves, and we were one of the last countries, in the continent to abolish slavery. But the music of the slaves influenced our music very, very much. And so there's a lot of rhythmic things and a lot of different types of music based on different rhythmic elements or rhythmic ideas, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So
So anyway,
the next
moving
piece I
on.
want to share with
Yeah.
you is a piece that I wrote for the Los Angeles Gay Men's Chorus. Wait, let me replace this. The Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles, GMCLA. It's called CDD. And in this performance that you're going to hear is being performed by a Brazilian choir, the Madrigal de Brasília. It's a group of professional singers from Brasília, the capital of Brazil. They're all music teachers who teach in a school, and as part of their load, they also have this semi-professional choir. The conductor is Isabella Sekef. It's a wonderful, another brilliant woman from Brazil. And the reason I want to share this with you is because another thing that has been happening, and I've been very fortunate during my time in the United States, is I have received a lot of commissions, music, people who ask me to write music for them. So CDD was the first commission that I received in the United States was from the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles. They were going on a tour of South America, and they were ending the tour in Brazil. And so they commissioned a composer from each of the countries that they were going to visit to write a piece for them to take on tour. So in every country, they had at least one piece from that country, you know, written especially for them. So I was the one chosen for Brazil. And so I wrote piece CDD for them. Now, here is my challenge, though. Now I have to write a piece for a male chorus. And I wanted to do it, you know, something with folk inclination, something that is inspired by folk music or folklore. And it had to be something that had to be kind of showy for them to take on tour. So, and knowing me, I don't know, Linda perhaps more, you, David, and I just have met more recently, but I have a kind of a little twisted sense of humor, and I can be a little, you know, funny sometimes. So I wanted to do something funny for them to take on tour. And so the song that I found for them, the folk song that I used for this tune says, vem cá, ó CDD, vem cá, ó CDD. Come here, CDD is a person. So he goes, come here, CDD, come here, CDD. And then the next line goes, as moças te chamam, você não quer vir. As moças te chamam, você não quer vir. Which means the girls are calling you, but for some reason you don't come to answer to them. The girls are calling you, but you don't come to answer. You know? Keep in mind, I'm writing this for the Gay Men's Chorus, right?
Oh, geez, yeah.
The second part of the song, they answer. They go, é de mim só, é de Maceió. It's the other part of the melody. É de mim só, é de Maceió. It's like, it's only me, it's only me. I come from Maceió, it's a city, right? And then the end of it, they go, encontrei uma velha de uma perna só. Meaning, when I went, it's only me. I'm coming from Maceió. And the last time I traveled, I found a one-legged old woman who just was coming after me. So that's the answer to the question. So everybody's like, why are the girls calling you and you're not coming? And then the answer is, well, because last time a girl called me, I found a one-legged old woman who wanted to be with me. So that's the whole joke with the Gay Men's Chorus, that they spend most of the song saying, the girls are calling you, but you're not coming. The girls are calling you, but you're not. Anyways, there is a recording of them singing this piece in Rio at their final concert of their tour. It's on YouTube, but I decided to choose another one because this one on you that has them singing has it's kind of there's a video of their tour, you know, showing pictures of the whole tour. So I thought it would be more fun to watch a Brazilian choir singing. So this is the Madrigal de Brasília with Isabella Sekef performing CDD.
Okay.
So that's CDD. It's a very, very playful one. It's actually deceptively difficult. It seems this is a wonderful choir. They make it sound so easy and so simple and so fun, but there are some real challenges in this piece, you know. And every choir that performs this, I'm always like, wow, this is so awesome. It is such a fun experience, you know, to see your music being performed, you know. There are two different levels there. Sometimes when I am conducting my own music, there's a lot of fun during that. But I think it's even more fun watching other people do it and see how they interpret the things because there are certain things that you just cannot put on a score, you know. It's an inflection, it's a look, it's a feeling, it's kind of an attitude kind of a thing. And I just love when the ensembles get it. So the next piece that I want to show you, it's called Meu Maracatu. And the video that you're going to watch, it's Madrigal Singers. It's a choir from Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois, conducted by Dr. Carol Carson. And I met their teacher, the conductor, at a conference. And I gave her some samples of my music. It's like, oh, Carol, we became friends. And I'm here's my music. If you ever have an opportunity to perform my music, you know, here it is. So she took it and just said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so she programmed with her choir. And this piece I had written for my choir at CSU Stanislaus, for my chamber singers. It was a commission from the Turlock Concert, you know, Association for a special gala that they had, you know, many years ago. And they commissioned myself to write a piece for the choir. They commissioned Dr. Deborah Kavash, my colleague at the university, to write a piece for the wind ensemble. So we did, and then a year or two later, the piece was published, and so I gave this copy to my friend from Illinois, and she decided to program with her choir. So this was a few years ago, and once the choir had learned the music, she called me and said, Daniel, would you do a Skype session with them, just kind of to coach us a little bit on the pronunciation of the Portuguese, or in some kind of stylistic things about the music that you could, you know, have a recommendation for us? Like, okay. So we had a Skype session, and the kids were awesome. This was way before the pandemic. So she had put, a big screen in the rehearsal room, and I was there in the big screen, and I could see them, and it was a really fun experience. And I coached them a little bit, and didn't think about much. That was still in the beginning process for them learning the music, and they had the performance, and it wasn't live streamed or anything. So she just said, "Oh, Daniel, the performance was great, and I'll send you a recording once it's available." And so sometime later, she sent me this video that she said, "Daniel, here's the video of us performing." And it blew me away. Number one, the choir is performing the entire piece without conductor. Number two, they absolutely got the inflections of the rhythms, and it is so good. I told her that your choir does that piece better than my choir, and I wrote for my choir, and I like your interpretation much more than I did of my own. So that is something that is also fascinating for a composer, to see when other people interpret their music and they take it a different twist, or they do something with them that you didn't think about it, or when they elevate what you did to a higher level because it's so expressive or because it's so polished. And I think this performance has it all. It's artistically beautiful. The kids they look like they're having a great time, and it's technically just perfect. So that's why I would like to share this with you. Meu maracatu. Maracatu is a folk tradition from the northeast of Brazil. And it includes dance. It's actually a procession with a bunch of dancers and people singing, and they go through the street celebrating. And it's a reference. The maracatu celebration started towards the end of slavery in Brazil, when there was already a lot of kind of movement among the slaves to be freed and all of that, and abolitionism. And so the emperor of Brazil at the time, to calm the slaves down, he would allow the slaves once a year to celebrate their own heritage and their own, where they came from in Africa, and their kings. And, so what the slaves would do, they would come together, and they would kind of choose a kind of like a royal court with the king and the queen, and there would be a procession singing and celebrating. That was the only day when they could do that, celebrate their own traditions. And so that's how the maracatu was created. And this music is inspired by that tradition. So I hope you enjoy it.
Yes.
I just love what they do.
Oh, that is great.
They are having such a fun time. This piece is really doing well. I mean, now with the pandemic, no one is buying music,
Right.
but since this piece was published, it's been selling quite a bit. I'm very happy that a lot of choirs are performing it. It has been done for all state choirs, so it's a really cool piece that's getting a lot of good feedback from the choirs and the directors in the U.S.
Do you always compose in Portuguese?
Yes, yes. I only have two compositions. Well, I should say three. One is not published, but I have only three things that I used English texts for. One was a piece that I was commissioned to write for the Modesto Symphony. That when the symphony decided to start a youth chorus, a children's chorus, they commissioned me to write a piece for them to perform in their first season. So I was really fortunate to work with one of our local poets, Sal Salerno, who is, from what I just heard, is the poet laureate now of Modesto, I think, for the next couple of years.
He made a comment.
Yes, he
He's
is.
watching. He said,
Oh,
"Bravo,
great.
Daniel."
Oh, thank you, Sal. Thank you for being here. Yeah, congratulations on your poet laureate of Modesto. Sal was great. The story of that piece, unfortunately, I do not have a recording to share of that one, but that's the story of that piece was that I had the symphony ask me to write for them, and I just like, no, I cannot write a text. I'm not particularly I mean, I don't even do it in Portuguese, much less in English. And I thought, wait, this is the perfect opportunity to work with a local poet. And it was December, and I was going to that. What did they call that thing that they have in December? in
The
Modesto?
mod shop.
Yes, mod shop. Thank you. It was the day we had the Modesto mod shop, and it was so amazing. And the Modesto poetry group, what is it? What are they called, Linda?
Modesto Stanislaus Poetry Center.
There you go. They had a table set up on the street there during mod shop with a few of the local poets there, and they were making this fun thing that you could come and put three letters or three words there, and they would write a poem for you, right? And so my partner at the time did that. He put three words there, and then the next day he got an email from the poet with the very cute poem, and that I thought it was so cool. And when I saw that poem, I was like, oh my goodness, I want to work with this person. So it kind of took me a while to get to who had written the poem, because it turned out that the person who sent my partner the poem had not written the poem, and we thought that she had been, the person. And she said, "Oh, I'm so glad to hear from you." When I contacted her, but I didn't write the poem. It was Sal Salerno who did, and I'd be glad to put you in touch with him. So I met with Sal, and I told him, listen, I have a big challenge for you. I need to write a piece for the Symphony Chorus, and it's for the children's chorus. And I'm really under a deadline. And so can you come up with something for me in a week? And he looked at me kind of funny. I still remember that meeting we met at Divas, no, at Queen Bean. And he looked at me, he's like, oh, okay, I'll see what I can do. And less than a week later, he calls or emails me, Daniel, I have something to show you. And he sent me 4 different poems that I had a really hard time even choosing which one, because the 4 poems were beautiful. But I ended up choosing one that I called We Are the Innocents. I cannot remember. Oh gosh, Sal is never going to forgive me, but I can remember the title that he gave to the poem, but I did not use his title. So maybe Sal can put it in the chat if he's still watching.
Well, let's. Our time is getting kind of short. Let's move on. Yeah. We got time for maybe one more.
One more piece. So how about watching this? This is the newest piece that I wrote for a middle school choir in Cupertino, California, in the Bay Area. They were going to perform at Carnegie Hall, and they asked me to write a piece for them to premiere at Carnegie Hall. So they ended up premiering here in California because they had a concert before they went to New York, and they wanted to try all the repertoire. So the video that you have is their farewell concert, singing this piece called La Vino Bang. It was the first piece that I wrote for a middle school choir, for piano and percussion, and the choir piano and percussion. And they do a fabulous job. And this piece is also based on a folk tradition from the north part of the country, where the region of Amazon is. It's called, this dance is called carimbo. And it has a really fun motive. And you see that in this video, the kids actually do dance. They do some of the movements of the carimbo dance in Brazil. So this is maybe a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken. The conductor is Shelley Durbin, and the name of the ensemble is the Dynamics.
Okay.
These kids are so adorable. My goodness. This is the end. This is the final one. Oh, they are so adorable.
Very, very, very nice. Wow.
This
Wonderful.
was a fun experience. So
Such talent, man.
Yeah, it was great.
Say, speaking of talent, you mentioned a colleague, Kavash or something?
Yes, Deborah Kavash.
Yeah, and she composed the music for the Opera Modesto production of The Race.
That's right.
the
That's
opera.
right.
It's like, what's going on down there at Stanislaus State? You guys are Man, this is a
We are getting stuff done.
a cauldron of talent, musical talent down there.
And it's a beautiful, I mean, Debbie Kavash is one of those kind of um, treasures of the area that I don't even know we have, complete awareness of how wonderful that woman is. She's a great composer, she's a wonderful teacher, great colleague. She's been a very dear friend for over 20 years. And Debbie has written some beautiful music too. I mean, she has written, actually, the Modesto Symphony Chorus performed one of her pieces a few years ago when we were doing Carmina Burana. We performed a piece that she wrote called Amor for choir and percussion. And she has written at least 2 or 3 different pieces for my ensembles at school. And Deborah is great. This opera that she wrote now for Modesto Opera, I've heard that they have been nominated for many awards and festivals, and they're getting a lot of good feedback. So
Yes,
awesome
yes.
to see this here in our community.
So anyway, it's so nice to become aware of the immense talent in our area, and so happy that you're part of it. Man, I'm glad I got to meet you. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for being here, and good afternoon, I guess.
Thank you so much, Daniel. This was fabulous. Love
Thank
talking
you.
to
I
you.
appreciate the opportunity to be here and share a little bit of myself with our wonderful Stanislaus community.
Okay.
All right.
See you around. Okay.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.